Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. Our guest today is Dianna Leeder, Leeder, in case you're getting off the phone and looking for her. Dianna Leeder is a certified professional coactive coach, an American Confidence Institute certified confidence coach, and an award-winning author, podcaster, and owner of Crave More Life Coaching. Dianna has written 4 books to date, and the most recent book, which we will touch base with today, is Find Your Voice, Save Your Life 4, which is titled Transcendent Men, Real Stories. Welcome to the show, Dianna.
Thank you, Joanne. I really appreciate being here and the invitation, and I'm eager to get into this.
Well, I'm grateful that you were here because you have written 3 previous books for women. Now you're talking about men, and they would probably take up 6 books. So tell our audience, because they listen and they listen more than once, why you're here and how you have decided to turn your life to transcendent men and their real stories.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, Joanne, and listeners, I'm an intuitive life hack. That's how I like to describe myself, because I help people get what they want when they find their voice. So why life hack? It sounds a little hickish, but it really works. And I use that term because finding and using your voice is all about relationships. And since we are in relationship with everything we come into contact with, then we need to figure out what those relationships need from us so that they work better for us. So the life hacking is a tool that I teach my clients to understand their relationships, each little nuance, each little bit, to see how they measure up to their own personal needs, and to go inside themselves and see if there are things that they can do to improve that relationship experience for themselves. So that's kind of where I'm starting from. My career has been about working with women on issues that kept them silent, most of them their whole lives. Often we would run into things like intimate partner violence, sexual assault, economic development, and when you think about it, women that are being violated in those ways or are poor and can't put food on the table for their kids are probably the most silenced of us all. I began my coaching practice working with women because I knew women. I'm a woman. I knew what I had experienced. I knew what other women were experiencing, and I knew that I could easily work with women. At that particular point, I realized that I had lost my own voice, as it feels like I'm losing right now. Sorry, I'm feeling a little choppy. At that particular time, my long-term marriage had hit some bumps, and I was wading through my way to figure that out when I realized that I had been silent since I was a kid. Not from a poor upbringing, not from a family that didn't love me, all that stuff was really great, but there was something that had been missing, and I was silenced. So that silencing kept me playing small, always responding to what others around me wanted instead of what I wanted and what I needed.
Did you know when you were younger what you wanted that you were afraid to ask for? As you say here, I love the word unsilence. I mean, your topic and you and your presentation are profound with good timing, because you're not the first woman that I've come across in this last month or so, very specifically about how women have been silenced and how they're not willing to put up with it any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I love that we're not that people aren't putting up with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, my take is that there probably isn't a human in this world, certainly not a woman in this world, who has not had her voice silenced or quieted, completely at some point in her life. I don't think that there is a woman, and if it's, even if it's just to the minor end where we've been challenged, where we do stand up and we do say what we need, and someone says, you ain't getting it, or it's not happening, or challenges our right to ask for what we need.
Yeah, so, the standard things, like men talking over women and not, apologizing. Mm-hmm. Different, they still have different charges at dry cleaners for women's shirts versus men's shirts. One's $1.98, the other is $9.98, or something like that. It's very odd, but we are treated differently.
We sure are.
I think we're getting lost in this. We have white men on top, and then go through the list, and I think women as a whole come in halfway.
Yeah,
we're not number 2, 3, or 4.
No, we're not.
We're closer to number 8 is where I figured it out.
Yeah.
And if you're not a woman, you don't understand it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, a whole other podcast that could talk about those differences and how we're accepted and how we're not accepted. That's huge. It's absolutely huge. And it does become about voice, because if we are silenced and we don't speak up, we're not going to change anything. So I wanted to tell you that one of the first things I did when I became aware of what I was doing, how my behavior was holding me back, was to go out and get a tattoo. And I had it put on the inside of my left arm, and it says, "Look inside." Because what I realized was that what I was doing, and what a lot of my clients had been doing over the years, was to pay attention to other than what we needed inside. And a lot of women couldn't even say what they needed. They didn't know. They weren't sure about what that was. They weren't sure about how to say it. And one of the things that we learned about real fast when I did my confidence coaching certification is that if you are speaking about something that you know and understand to be true, then your confidence is there anyway. You don't have to go find it anywhere. It's there because you're speaking the truth. So, the whole process in terms of finding one's voice is to get very, very connected to inside. So to look inside. And I have my reminder there on my arm every day.
So you're helping women look inside for a long time, including looking inside yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you go, I think we'll talk about men now. So,
okay.
So it's, this one stands out for me. I mean, I know you've got Find Your Voice for Women, 3 powerful books. And then you have your 4th book, which is Find Your Voice, Save Your Life, Transcendent Men, Real Stories. So how does this, where is the parity? Where is, not equality, because I don't like that word, but, how do you relate to all of that, and how can you help our audience relate to, if you were working with women before, were you called to write about men?
I was called to write all these books. Once the first one was published, I had very, very clear spiritual guidance that said, okay, now you need to do another one for women, and you need to do one for women that are spiritual healers, and you need to do one for men. So at that time, I thought, I'm going to get through these other ones, and then I'm going to think about the men's one, because that one was the last one. But I'll tell you what happened in that whole process. And isn't this the way it always goes? You kind of live life and you start to learn from those experiences, and then your frame of reference gets changed and shifted to where you really need to be. So what I have learned through this, and why working with men now makes sense to me, is that, we are all silenced in one way or another. We are all, either through ancestral hits that we've had, then that we carry with us, any traumas that we carry with us, any, beliefs that we think are really true and they're not true at all about us, about what we can do, what we should do, what we need to do. All those things are not based on what is really inside of us, not on our own authenticity. It's all based on something else. So whether we are men or we are women, and this just comes back and it bites me every day, no matter whether we're men or we're women, we all have that outside that says, this is what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. All of us do. So from that respect, finding our voice is no different for men than women. The reasons that we've lost it may be different. The influences or the social expectations that are on either one of us as, either gender, they may be different, but they're not, they're the same thing. They're still expectations, and we rise to those instead of rising to ourselves. So the whole concept of finding your voice, again, is about learning who you are and that authenticity, and learning the strength and calling up your own courage to be able to speak to what that is that's inside. So, when I got to that point, the concept of working with men and doing this book with men was a no-brainer. They needed to hear that. They needed to have their stories told. They needed to be able to put those stories on paper. And I got to tell you, these stories are ones that just blew me away. When I first read them all, it was, wow. It challenged my own concept of masculinity, of maleness. I remembered times, it took me back to times when I would have thought to myself, well, that wasn't very manlike of that person, no, it was just them. Whatever they were doing was just them. And who was I to question that and give masculinity that kind of definition?
Well, you had your own set of beliefs and biases too. We all do. And people who are listening, I always advise them, actually close to a demand, that they re-listen to every podcast, because 9 times out of 10, they're driving the car, or running down the street, or doing their gym work, whatever, and they need a pen and paper to write things down. And there are many important things to write down what Dianna is saying. So, can you give us a brief story from the book, Transcendent Men, Real Stories?
Sure. And there are so many that it's kind of hard to pick one, but there are some that really stand out. There is a gentleman who was incarcerated, and while he was incarcerated, he found a book that helped him open up to himself, and it had him understanding and seeing the kind of father figure that he truly had, which didn't serve him as a child or as a young adult. Obviously, he was incarcerated, so he developed his own concept of what that father figure really could have looked like. And he decided that was the kind of father figure he wanted to be for his own son. So all that kind of growth happened while he was incarcerated. And of course now, years later, he has a beautiful relationship with his child. No longer a child, actually, but yeah, so that's just one. That's just one. There are so many, and most of them are about connecting to either the healing that they needed to experience to get through what happened to them as children or young adults, and then also to choose to make a conscious choice about the kind of person they wanted to be. Once the healing took place, once the armor came off, that's how I like to describe it. The armor that they carry that said, I have to do it this way. I can't let so-and-so down, and I have to be the man, and I have to, my concept of masculinity obviously is one where I need to be tough and strong all the time. And moving that into a place of, who really am I? What is it that I need? And I need to be able to express whatever that is inside. And often for these guys, it is about honoring the needs of their heart, which as a line by itself is a little unbelievable, right?
Right.
When you think about it. Yeah. Yeah. Honoring their hearts.
So you created the space in alignment with these men who needed the space to heal themselves. And so the timing was perfect, obviously, for not only you to do this book, but for them to make it to the other side and to become whole human beings and not having to rely on what they were told since they were a child or read in a book or anything like that. You allowed them the space to take a stand for themselves. As humans first, as men second, let's say that.
And yes, and that's the whole purpose of the entire series of books, has been to hold that space. And I have to say that most of these men did all this work before they came and wanted to write this chapter. This is that it's not something that kind of happens overnight in terms of that level of healing. I can take no credit for getting them from all the way from A to Z. Sorry, Z. I'm Canadian.
Right.
And, they did. I can take no credit for that whatsoever. What I did was just simply open up the space for them to write those stories.
Well, I think there's a little more. I mean, you got direction. You received a direction from Spirit, and you followed it. You could have ignored it.
That's true.
And you didn't.
True. And because that's no fun to
Pardon?
Ignore any. I said because that's no fun. That to ignore that kind of guidance is.
No, you get hit hard if you don't pay attention.
You do.
People don't get that.
And there's that self-growth, for us when we're there, I love that.
Yes. So it's perfect that you created the space, and yes, they may have started before they met you, but they met you along their path, and you and they aligned, and you created something bigger than each of your individual selves, which goes beyond male or female.
Yes.
If people,
absolutely.
Don't know that who are listening, it's beyond it. You go back and you become spirit yourself.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So what's next for you?
What's next for me? You know what? It's, I'm considering another book. But I'm just considering it at this point. I think that something about relationships would be really great. I think that there is, whether you're male or female, in order to obviously to understand what works in a good relationship. If you're familiar with that 1 + 1 = 3 concept, where each person comes in and is of their own wholeness, and then they create the third entity that is actually the relationship. That's a lot of what happens in my coaching because we're talking about relationships. So we're offering ourselves as a whole being, and assuming that the person that's coming into relationship with us is a whole being as well. And then we create the relationship that works for both of us. Right. So there is that interest there. And I also do, one of the things that I do kind of not on the side, but as part of this work is I train, I call them Find Your Voice Healers. I certify Find Your Voice Healers, who in my model of working with people to find and use their voices. So I want to, I'm kind of on a mission to get as many people using their voice as possible, male or female. So that's kind of what's around the corner for me. I'm not sure what it's going to look like as I sit here today, but yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, I think that's important because finding your voice, this is, I think during this COVID situation, things got turned around. It was an upside down world. It still is in many regards. And I think this is the time to bring forth pretty much anything, that might be off the beaten path. And when it's framed properly, like you're trying, find your voice healers, this is a piece of cake. And I think you're going to have a lot of people willing to participate in this training. Where is this information about, becoming a Find Your Voice healer? Is that on your website?
It's on my website, yes, under the Voices of Women Project. No, Voices Project. I think I took women off there after the men came in. Yes, or people can just email me at Dianna@cravemorelife.com. There'll be another one coming up, another training session coming up in the fall, and at least one more next year as well.
Great. How long do these training sessions last?
6 weeks, 3 or 4 hours every week for 6 weeks. Very hands-on, very experiential. So you basically go through the work that I do with my clients. So, you go through learning about who you are, taking responsibility for who you are, which is a huge one because, when we're silenced, we don't want to do that.
No.
We don't want to take responsibility. We just want to, sit down, be quiet, and eat some chips and watch some TV. So that's the stretch of it. But it's the kind of process that the feedback is saying now is not just important for practitioners to learn to use with their own clients, but it's also really important for the individual themselves because, often we're not where we could be in terms of using our own voice.
Most times, actually.
Yeah.
So your website is cravemorelife.com. That's Crave, C-R-A-V-E, more, M-O-R-E, life.com. And Dianna spells her name D-I-A-N-N-A, Leeder, L-E-E-D-E-R. Dianna is available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do. My podcast is on there. I do. Yes, I don't have it right in front of me, though.
That's fine. It's Crave More Life.
But I do. Yes.
Yeah. So either for those who are listening, I'm sure there's going to be some people who are listening who are very interested in becoming a Find Your Voice healer. And I'd be surprised if you don't get somebody from this podcast because it sounds like a good thing to do. When I say good, I mean, kind, goodness. Mm-hmm. So
thank you.
What are your closing words to our audience, Dianna?
You know what? I want to just go back to the last book, to Transcendent Men, Real Stories for a second. And that is to simply say that, a lot of times this book has been described as being really helpful to men, but it's not just for men. It clearly is not. It is also a book that will very much help partners of men. Even people who are looking for an intimate relationship, this is, you will read how men are behaving, how they are responding to, just life, how they are being masculine, how they are being men, that is different, that is thoughtful, that is caring and loving, and very, very different than I think much of the world expects. So if you don't want it for any other reason, go and find it for that. Take a peek and just see what's there and what men are showing us that they are being. It's beautiful. It's quite beautiful.
Well, I think your name, Leeder, is a profound name at this time with what you're doing, mostly as men talking about other men and how to be men. And I think you're one of, a few women coming from a place of not only training but experience with both men and women that is putting your foot forward and taking this, I see as a risk, but I think it's a reward for the people who work with you. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, very empowering to the people who are listening and to the people who will be hiring you and to the men who will buy this book and Transcendent Men, Real Stories, and help themselves have a better life. So you can go to craveyourlife.com and get a free copy of How to Start Finding Your Voice quiz and an ebook. cravemorelife.com/gift/ Crave More Life. It's all going to be here on Dianna's page on my website. So you just read everything, and I've incorporated everything. So I appreciate you being here today because I think this is important. This is important for women, that you're helping men, because it just will help everybody else, and this will multiply as the roads open up in front of them. Any final?
No, nothing more except to say thank you. And I think it will open doors. I do. And if it helps even one person, then that feels pretty good to me.
Right.
So thank you.
Then your job is done, or at least achieved. Mm-hmm. I want to thank Dianna Leeder for being here today. I want to thank you guys for listening. I love you all. You're great. Much appreciation. And everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.